يا هلا 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 حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا يا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا يا هلا ويا هلا ويا
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the program. It is a Wednesday morning and great to be with you as always, and interesting interviews lined up for you this morning with some amazing people doing some amazing work. We're going to be looking at the issue around the rhinos once again and why it's important for you and I as South Africans to become involved and vested in this initiative. This time around we're talking a rhino apps, rhino insurance, and a whole host more. And do remember, lines will be open throughout the show, so you can call in with comments and possibly even pledges if you so wish to do so. We're going to be talking to the Poultry Association as well, and I think there's been a bit of a scare as far as bird flu is concerned, and stocks and availability of poultry and eggs, and what you and I as consumers should be looking out for. And on that part of the interview, we'll be joined by Dr. Nkuna. She's a vet and she is with the Poultry Association. Our final interview for the morning will be on food security. So as you can see, it's a whole host of issues that truly matters to us as consumers and as a society. So we do hope you'll become a part of the conversation. First up, that beautiful creature, the rhino, and what we're going to do to save it from becoming endangered and possibly even extinct. In studio with us, we have two guests who are extremely passionate about conserving the rhinos, and I'm going to get them to introduce themselves and then we'll get the show on the road. Good morning, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
Good morning.
All right, you are?
I'm Saya van der Walt-Potgieter. I'm the Rhino Connect Director for Media and Marketing.
Good morning.
Morning,
Julie.
lovely to have you here, and introduce yourself to our viewers and also the company that you're representing this morning.
I'm Kobus Stapelberg from TWK Agri, situated in head office in Piet Retief, Mpumalanga. And we are involved in agribusiness and sustainability and food security and everything. So I'm very fond of the whole theme the whole day, because that's why we are in business.
But it's quite a coincidence, isn't it, that we've got this theme running through the show throughout this morning. You say you come from the Northern Transvaal?
No, Mpumalanga.
Mpumalanga, okay. So have you travelled all the way just for this interview?
Yes, but we do have business here. We've got offices here, so I came yesterday for our business.
All right. What we're talking about this morning is a little different from the normal Save the Rhino. Of course, that is uppermost in our minds, Save the Rhino, because the rhino is truly, every animal, bird, insect is truly integral to the whole ecosystem and environment. And very especially the rhino, because if the rhino is taken out of the equation, there's going to be a ripple effect throughout the entire eco chain and the environment. But this time around, we're going to be talking about the Rhino app. Who wants to respond? What on earth is this? Why was it developed? How is it going to help the rhino? Even though we're talking technology, how does it help the rhino?
I think I'll talk about the app and maybe Quivers can go into the insurance part of it. This is the first in the world, the Rhino Connect app. It's available on Google Play Store as well as Apple App Store, and people can download it for free. But it's the first Rhino app in the world where you can go, it's a one-stop shop where you can get information around rhinos, not just rhinos but endangered species.
Every possible thing about the rhino.
Anything about the rhino you can learn there. It's the latest news, videos, blogs. We have fantastic bloggers from all over the world, people who are really at the top of their game in the industry saving rhinos. So you can really read a host of information on the app. So the first part why we developed the app was to ensure that people get the first-hand information on rhino. You don't have to wait for a TV show to come up after a year where you have a filmed team in the field And they also are looking at what's happening with rhinos. You can go to your app and instantly read about what's happening. So yeah, it's, like I said, a one-stop shop. But we've launched the app and it's now available and people can download it. But I think the unique part of the app is that we wanted international community, South Africa, but also internationally, that they can have access to their own rhino, and that's where the insurance part comes in. And we were very fortunate from Rhino Connect's side to partner with TWK Agri, who created this insurance fund where we insure the rhinos, and then people have the ability, when they invest in a rhino, they can see footage, exclusive footage and videos, as well as information on their own rhino.
Okay, we'll go to Quibus in a minute or two, and TWK and the whole issue around the insurance.
Yeah.
How long did it take to develop this app, and who came up with the concept?
It feels like it took forever because there's a lot of technology, but we had such an amazing team that we worked with, our team in Bloemfontein, Rickers, JP and Vincent. They also do apps for other great companies around the world. One of our directors at Rhino Connect, Andries Potgieter, he's director for business. He came up with the idea that, yes, we're selling the insurance and we get people to buy shares in the rhino, but they also want to see the rhino. So how do we do that? And the idea was to develop the app just to view the rhino and get your information on your rhino, and then it actually spiraled from there. But let's make it an information center so that people can read and view and do research about rhinos. So it took about, I would say, the whole concept and our whole idea took about a year, but building the app about 6 months. And yeah, it's doing really great, and people are interested and they're downloading and they're engaging. So we're really happy with the progress.
Maybe very important just to note that although you can see everything on the app, you can follow your rhino on the app, the location settings are never on.
Yeah.
There were some questions raised that what about poachers? Can't they get in and they can get information? But all that is secured because there's no location on any rhino, although you can see each and every movement and feeding and all the happenings around the rhinos without any location setting.
You also spoke about, Saya spoke about your rhinos, so I then take out this insurance or contribute to the conservation of rhinos. How will I know that I have a share in a particular rhino?
The rhino that you are buying in will have a name, and you follow your rhino.
Okay.
So it can be Rhini, and Rhini will be your rhino in which you invested in, and then you will follow your rhino by name, although location is not available.
All right, I'm going to get back to how the rhinos are tracked in terms of knowing that, let's assume my rhino is called Rhini, how you track them and how much of footage would be available. But let's get to the insurance part and how this works.
For as little as R1,000 a year, you can invest in rhino conservation. And as TWK is standing for, our mission and vision is achieving sustainable growth together. And that's the reason why we joined forces with Rhino Connect and all the business owners of rhinos to assist with this rhino conservation. So for as little as R1,000 a year, you can buy in to a share of a rhino with a name.
And I think what is important, we actually broke it down so to make it easy for everyone. At the moment, we have in our pool, we have 3,000 rhinos, and we deal specifically with the private rhino sector. I know a lot of people, they contribute towards the public sector where you have the national parks, but we're focusing on the private sector because at the moment they're having the majority of rhinos in South Africa and in the world, and they really need our assistance. So what we've done with the insurance plan is, in a rhino you have 40 shares. So like Quibus said, R1,000 per share, and we have 40 shares. You buy your share, whether you want 1 share or 2 share or a whole rhino. We have had people buying a whole rhino, and you get allocated your specific rhino, and then you get your access via the app, and you can follow the rhino on the app, like with videos, footage, whether he or she has had a baby or breeding or whatever.
What about if I buy a share or the entire rhino, and I then make contact with you and say, I would love to come and meet with the rhino personally? Would you allow that?
Unfortunately not, because it's a very secure environment, and we also have to protect the security of the rhinos and also the rhino owners. We know that information, also location, leads to poaching incidents, and that's why our undertaking with our private rhino owners for allowing us to assist them is not to locate or to divulge the location of the rhinos. So we're very strict in terms of the location. But yeah.
And that's the uniqueness of this whole project, is that you can follow your rhino. But unfortunately, as I say,
Yeah.
we can't give access to the rhinos themselves.
What guarantee are you going to give me? I want to buy or a couple of rhinos or a couple of shares in a rhino. And what guarantee would I have that this is truly a legitimate operation?
All of them gets tagged.
Okay, hold that thought. Let's take an ad break. We're talking rhino conservation. We're talking the new Rhino app, which has just been launched. Please stay close to this part of the interview for more information around this issue. I've raised the issue or the question around how legitimate is this operation, and we're going to wait for the response right after the ad break.
We can't take it anymore. If I give up, where would these rhinos go? Who would look after them?
Private rhino owners in South Africa are the custodians of a quarter of the world's rhino population, about 6,000. Government efforts are focused on national parks where severe poaching is taking place.
Most of the time, myself and my family have to jump in to patrol. We can never let our guard down.
The Kruger National Park could be without rhinos by 2020. The private sector is therefore the only ones that can secure the future survival of the country's rhinos. They are, however, struggling to keep head above water under escalating costs.
We are literally at war with the poachers. It's a daily battle to ensure that the rhinos stay alive.
The NPO Rhino Connect, together with financial institutions, TWK Agri and Animal Sure, have created a unique insurance policy initiative to allow the public to ease the burden on local rhino owners, while at the same time ensuring the future existence of these magnificent giants.
We know the power of a united community. If we stand together, we can strengthen the arms of the private rhino owner and ensure that our children's children still get to see these rhinos.
You as a member of the public can invest in your own rhino. 40 shares are needed to insure one rhino for a 12-month period. 50% of your contribution assists the owner with security and conservation measures. 30% will go towards insuring the rhino against poaching or death by natural causes. 20% will go towards an investment account. Should your rhino have no claim in the 12-month period, 20% of your initial investment will be refunded to you. If the rhino dies, you will receive 100% of your investment in return. The rhino owner will also be reimbursed up to the insured amount. If you invest in a rhino, you will also receive access to the Rhino Connect app with regular live updates on your own rhino.
Now I know sometimes this battle seems great, but I say if you and I stand together, we will be the change.
This project is the first of its kind in the world and designed to save our rhinos for future generations to come. It will, however, require a community effort. Our rhino owners need your support. They cannot stand alone.
We're talking the new Rhino app that's just been introduced. In fact, it was launched a couple of days ago, and from what our guests are telling me, it has really taken South Africa and the rest of the world by storm, but you and I still need to play our part. But back to you, Cobus, and I asked you a very controversial question and the legitimacy of this whole scheme, the Rhino app and the insurance. Because there's so much of security around the location of the rhinos, even if I invest in a rhino or two, you're not going to give me access to those rhinos because of security reasons. How do I know that this is a legitimate operation and not some fly-by-night that will take my money and run away?
As I mentioned just before the break, each and every rhino gets tagged and certified by Honest Support in Pretoria. So the number, unique number, will be linked to your rhino with a name on the app. So the access on the app, you will see your rhino, of which you will receive a membership certificate as soon as you invest in a rhino, or more rhinos, or a share in a rhino. You will receive a membership certificate from TWK Agri Insurance Division to prove, and that will be your proof, that you are an investor of that specific rhino with a unique number.
And so that would prove the legitimacy of it. We can check with Honest Support that this is in fact a legitimate operation.
Yes.
Any other checks and balances that one could undertake just to make sure that this is on board, above board?
I think what the kind of launch that we've also taken to the ground and to the road to inform people about this project, we've gone the media way. We've actually exposed the whole operation, how we work, to the media and then conveying it to the public. So we're really an open book in terms of how we work, what our operations are. And from Rhino Connect's side, we're also working with registered financial institutions like TWK Agri, that is very well known, more than 40 years in the business. So we all, connecting our name to this project, and we cannot, because it's a very small world when it comes to rhino conservation. You cannot burn your bridges and become involved in very controversial projects or taint your name. So we've made sure that we've ticked all the boxes and made sure that this is a very legitimate, and also that we're able to answer all the questions.
Cobus, how's the take-up been as far as the insurance or the shares, the take-up of shares has been?
Very good. We are very satisfied, although there is a lot of work to do because of the fact that we are working with, our aim is to do most of the privately owned farmers, rhinos. There's still a long way to go, but we are very happy and comfortable with the uptake at this stage. With regards to the insurance, as the video just showed, of your R1,000, 50% will go to the rhino owner who struggles to survive at this stage.
But if he is a rhino owner, we know you've bandied a couple of figures around and indicated that a rhino, the upkeep of a rhino is about, or you're wanting to raise 40,000 Rand per rhino per annum. If that is how high the upkeep is on a rhino, why bother? Could that money not be utilized elsewhere to, for the conservation purposes?
Farming in itself is presenting of a GDP of South Africa more than close to 60%, and rhino farming is one of the subsectors under the agri industry, as well as a big portion of our tourism gets funded, or the tourism funding
part
that
of the
gets
Big Five.
Rhino is part of a Big Five. So for tourism, it's very crucial that we assist the rhino owners to do their business sustainable.
Say in terms of foreign currency, the tourist dollars, so to speak, does it offset the balance? Does it offset the amount of money we're putting into rhino farming and rhino conservation?
Definitely. I mean, you have tourists all over the country or all over the world coming to South Africa to see the big five, like you said. In the Kruger National Park, we're losing between 1 to 3 rhinos per day.
Sure.
And they estimate that...
Due to poaching?
Due to poaching. And because it's such a big area, government and sandparks cannot curb the poaching stretch that's happening. So it's between 1 to 3 rhinos a day, and we estimate that we will have no more rhinos in the Kruger National Park by 2020. That's in 3 years' time. So what we're focusing on, as I said earlier, is the private sector, where we're working with 3,000 rhinos. That's almost a quarter of the world's rhino population. If these rhino owners give up due to the high cost of upkeeping a rhino, because there's no bonus for them in that. They don't make money from rhinos, they're just pouring it in. So you've got the drought, so people have to get more money or spend more money on food security, because the poachers are really devastating and they're just upping their game the whole time, so you have to stay a step ahead. So the costs are escalating, and therefore we're focusing our attention on the private sector, because if they give up, where will we go? What will happen to our tourism as well?
Then everything will be lost.
We've come almost to the end of the show, believe it or not, but the all-important question, I think this gets asked a lot, and that is, why not legalize rhino, horn and elephant tusk trade to then circumvent the problem we're sitting with? It's a lucrative industry. Once you legalize it, lots of money can be made. Just look what we're creating. We're creating an entire illegal poaching industry. Why has this not happened up to now?
Well, from Rhino Connect's side, we don't formally express a view on trade or no trade. Even within the private rhino owner sector and people associating with us, we have different views, and everyone's got a right to his or her opinion. But as you said,
wouldn't that be the answer?
That's just
legalizing the trade.
And that is something that is going on. We've got a lot of private rhino owners fighting government at this stage to legalize, because they're putting forward a lot of information saying that since it's been banned, the trade of horn, poaching numbers has gone up. And they're using that argument, while government's saying it's not so, and other organizations as well. But if you look at the facts over the last, since they've banned the trade in 2009, we've been losing more than 400 rhinos per year in sandparks.
Okay, finally, what happens to a rhino once its horn has been cut off? Does that mean that the rhino dies a natural death, or dies an agonizing death?
No, not at all. If it's a poaching incident, yes, because they're very brutal and they hack and they don't care what happens to the rhino. Dehorning is one of the measures taken to ensure that poaching doesn't take place. It's a very quick process, 12 minutes, since you dose the rhino to sleep. A vet is assisted by a vet. The vet cuts off the horn. It's like a fingernail. You can actually, it's like you're cutting off your finger. It grows back. After a year, it grows back. And then you have to cut it off again. So it's exactly like a fingernail. They don't feel any pain. There's actually...
But if done correctly, obviously.
Done correctly.
And there lies the answer, doesn't it?
Exactly.
Legalizing the trade, and of course, obviously, when you dehorn the rhino on a regular basis.
I think it's a lot about education. People need to educate themselves. Most people don't know that a horn grows back. They don't know what it entails to dehorn a rhino, and also the positive that can come out of that. So I think on our whole process, what we're doing is actually educating people about rhino conservation in the private sector as well, and why it's necessary to do it and get involved.
And that's why
I'll give you the last word.
And that's why we say, go download the app, get
educated,
get all the information on what rhino conservation consists of and is doing, and then maybe in the 3 or 4 or 5 years to come, you will not be able to see a rhino in any of the national parks if it's going on the trends like it's going on, but you will have access to South African rhinos and the privately owned rhinos on your app.
All right, and that's where we leave it, Cobus, and say thank you indeed. Lots and lots of luck and success with this initiative. And hopefully you'll come back in a couple of months' time and tell us just how it's going.
Perfect.
Thank
Thank
you
you so
very much,
much.
Julie.
Thank you.
That was Saya and Cobus talking to us about the new Rhino app that's just been launched. And of course, it is free. So access it and see what you can do, how you can make a difference in saving the rhino. Still to come, food security and also the South African Poultry Association. So do stay with us. And welcome back. We are now joined by the South African Poultry Association, and the guest in the studio is Dr. Charlotte Nkuna. She is a vet and she obviously represents the South African Poultry Association. Charlotte, good morning. Welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Lovely to have you here. And obviously the relevance is we've heard about the bird flu. And whenever bird flu presents itself in other parts of the world, we know that a couple of months down the line, South Africa is going to be beset with similar issues. We're going to be looking at the whole poultry industry, the do's, the don'ts, what is safe, what is healthy, and so forth. Let's start right at the beginning. As you and I speak, is there bird flu going around or not?
As we speak at the moment, yes. It started, the first case was reported in June of this year, 2017, and it was in Mpumalanga, and then it moved to Gauteng, and then from Gauteng, it moved over to the northwest, and then we had a case in KZN, and then from there, it moved right down to the Western Cape, where we saw it in ostriches, and we've been seeing it now in laying hens and some breeder chickens.
How does a farmer spot the fact that there's bird flu as far as his poultry are concerned? And what is the first steps that he has to take in alerting the authorities? If he doesn't do that, what would be the repercussions not only to his entire farm, neighboring farms, and the general public as well?
So the first signs really, for the first cases we saw, were just lots of dead chickens.
Dead chickens?
Yeah, lots and lots of dead chickens. So you start off with maybe 30 today, and then tomorrow it's 100, and then 400 the day after. Those are not normal patterns. And initially, there's some other diseases that can cause that. And the vets who saw that in the first cases, they took samples, they sent them to the lab, and they ruled out the other diseases when they tested for avian influenza, and then it was positive. But also we had a case in Zimbabwe, so we were looking out for it because it's quite close to home. What happens after that is that the farm, on a suspect case, the farm is put under quarantine. So nothing leaves the farm, not even the product that's produced there, not equipment, nothing leaves the farm until such time that all the chickens have been culled and they've been decomposted and the farm has been thoroughly cleaned. So it's quite a lengthy process that continues. And if that is not done and there's no quarantine immediately, then the virus spreads very quickly. So the chances are by the time you start seeing symptoms in one house, if the houses are managed by the same team, we find that it probably has moved already to other houses. So it's quite a labile virus. It moves quite quickly.
It's a huge loss to the farmer. Hopefully he is insured under that eventuality. But that being said, once he's been quarantined, obviously the association and other parties would go in to give him the green light to say that you are now clean, you're ready to restart your operation. How big a project is that? Just how big an undertaking is it to now start from scratch?
Well, the state takes over so the state vets will then become responsible for the site. So they are the ones who would then say, okay, the farm is clean, and there will be several tests that will be done in the process to make sure that the farm is really clean. We work on about 72 days, so it takes at least 72 days,
3
but
months
much
about.
longer. They are 3 months. And then also because by the time you're clean, you may have missed your chance of getting your next round of chickens in. So you have to wait for your next batch of chickens to come through. So it can be quite a long, lengthy process, even up to 6 months at times.
The impact on us as consumers, apart from the fact that there might be a scarcity of meat and eggs, poultry and eggs, what other impacts are felt by us, and what are the health risks to us?
Bird flu can be transmitted to people, some of the strains, but the strain we're dealing with currently has not been shown to jump over to people. So in the many cases that have been reported worldwide, it hasn't jumped over to people. So, and also the Department of Health is involved in the process and making sure that the people who are working on those farms who are busy with culling and the cleaning are tested to make sure that they don't become infected. And so far there have been no cases. So, and also because the product that is produced when there's bird flu, there is none of it going onto the food chain. So chances of someone picking up a tray of eggs or broilers that have been infected is very slim, because product that's left the last 7 days is also pulled back and not sold and sent off to the shops.
We've talked about bird flu being pretty widespread throughout South Africa, so I should imagine that we're pretty safe here in Gauteng and possibly other parts of South Africa. Once it's now sitting somewhere in the Western Cape or somewhere in that region, how careful should we be? Should we still be stocking up on poultry? Should we just keep away from poultry for the time being? How safe are we?
Well, like I said, this virus has absolutely no impact on people. So people can still eat eggs, they can still eat chicken. So there is no problem with it being transmitted to people. But then over and above that, none of the product that of infected chickens end up in the food chain. So it's very safe for people to still buy the chicken and buy the eggs and eat them. And I think that's one fundamental issue that people actually were a bit skeptical at the beginning, but now we rest assured and we know for a fact that there is absolutely no danger to people.
All right, let's look at eggs, contamination and salmonella, but right after the ad break. I'm talking to Dr. Charlotte Nkuna. She is from the South African Poultry Association. We're talking about the recent outbreak of bird flu in South Africa and also Zimbabwe and of course other parts of the world. But she's just reassured me that everything is under control. It's pretty safe to eat the chicken from your supermarket shelves, or even if you buy live chickens and slaughter them and eat them. For now, we're very safe, as she says. But let's look at other issues in terms of contamination of eggs. Does that happen? Are we at risk? And a whole host more. And if you have any questions, do call in on the open line. Welcome back. Still to come on the show, we're going to be talking food security. And right now we're still talking food. We're talking poultry, we're talking the bird flu and egg contamination, if there is in fact something like egg contamination. Now, Charlotte, the egg is fully formed. It has a hard shell. Should I be concerned about contamination to the eggs? Does it happen? Is it a reality?
Yes, it can happen. What normally happens is that when an egg is laid, when it's still warm, it's still open, and then within a few seconds, and then it cools down and then it closes. So once it closes, nothing can penetrate the egg. So
but there is that window of opportunity.
There is that small window of opportunity. And also if it's something that goes through the system. So if it goes and sits in the ovaries, and then it can, in the oviduct where the eggs are formed.
Of the poultry,
of
obviously.
Of the chicken. And then it's possible that things can go in. But what we normally do is that there is a testing regime where things are the eggs are tested for diseases, so things such as salmonella and others, and then as well as for chemicals. So for antibiotics, for cleaning chemicals, for things like that. So there is a testing regime for residues that may be in the eggs, and that's how you eliminate it.
Does that mean that in the South African context, because we know you alluded to a scandal off air just now in the Netherlands with contaminated eggs, does that mean here in South Africa we take the extra precaution as the eggs go to market, that they go through the scanning system?
That's correct.
All the eggs throughout the country?
Most of the commercial operators would have a testing regime because it's required also by the supermarkets. They insist on testing being done to make sure that the food that actually ends up on the table is safe. So that is part and parcel of quality control. It's measures that are put in place to safeguard the consumers.
Okay, just hold that thought. Let's take a call. Assalamu alaikum to our caller. Welcome to the show.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and good morning to your guests as well, Julie. Very good and interesting topics as always. Today I wanted to find out if it is legal for companies to pump the fillet of the chicken that has been packaged in 1 kg bag full of brine, and once you defrost it, you get about 760 grams instead of a kilo.
Okay.
Then to the same packs also, they have bruised fillets inside and some have blood inside as well. And once I actually approached the company, and they told the health inspector that it's because of the way you freeze it and where you store it, how it actually causes to come blood inside. And I told the health inspector that how is it possible that the animal blood is out of the body, but it can get bruised while it is frozen. That totally didn't make sense to me.
Okay, we get the gist of your question. Thank you. Brilliant questions.
One other thing, Abba, there was actually one day that I bought half a dozen of eggs, and I found black egg yolks inside. It was smelling very badly.
Okay.
I'd like to hear from the guests how old would that eggs have been for the yolks to go that color.
Okay, thank you indeed. Brilliant questions. Dr. Nkuna, would you like to respond to all of that? I must admit, I too have come across chicken fillets with, streaks of blood on them, and I kind of wondered, was it very brutally filleted, or what went wrong there that you still see streaks of blood on a fillet, a piece of fillet?
I think sometimes in the processing and the bleeding, it can happen that some of the blood is left when it's being drained. So that is possible, but it shouldn't be a very common occurrence. So usually once the draining of the blood has happened, the chicken should have no streaks at all. But it is possible sometimes that there may be some leftover little bit of blood, but it shouldn't be a lot of blood.
Is that safe? Or should we just kind of cut away that piece or throw the entire piece of meat away?
No, I think if it's just blood, you can just wash it off and
wash
take
it off or cut away the piece.
Yeah, and then we can. It should be safe to eat.
What is South African Poultry's stance on the issue around brine in the fillets? I too have come across that where the fillets are pumped with brine, and it's once you've cooked it, it's half or quarter the weight.
Brining is a legal process, is one of the processing that is done, and especially for the frozen pieces. And what it serves to do is actually to stop the chicken from becoming too dry in the freezing process. It's legislated, so there's only 15% of brining that is allowed, and no more. So it is a process that is legal, and it is allowed, and it is being regulated by the Department.
So you as a consumer need to check how much, what percentage of brine is actually in the chicken.
That's
and you
correct.
can then make the decision whether you want to purchase it or not.
Exactly. So because what happens is you have a choice between a fresh chicken, frozen with no brine, or brined chicken. Mm-hmm. So the consumer actually gets the choice. They can either spend more money and buy just the fresh chicken that is just has never been frozen, or some of the frozen chicken, which is usually a little bit cheaper, or the brined one, which is even more cheaper.
Okay, and then the caller also had a concern around the discoloration of the yolk of the egg. suggesting that it probably was very, very old or rotten.
I think what is important for the viewers to know is that eggs have a particular chain, a cool chain that needs to be followed. So the temperature of the eggs should not be too high where they are stored. So the storage of the eggs is very important because then that preserves them. And if at any point the temperatures were too high or if the eggs have been kept for too long, then it is possible that they will go off. And usually the shelf life of eggs is about 3 weeks.
Are we safe as far as our eggs are concerned? We've heard the scandal from the Netherlands. You did say that our eggs have to go through a testing process to pick up on bacteria, pesticides, etc., and then only do we get the green light to go ahead. But sometimes I should imagine it does slip through. So if I get a batch of contaminated eggs, I'm not going to know that there's insecticide or whatever on those egg shells. If I crack open those eggs, am I at risk?
Well, you will not know if there are insecticides because
that's what I'm saying. I'm unaware. I'm unaware.
And the way the testing is done is that it's done with statisticians and epidemiologists to actually.
The question I'm asking is: let's assume a batch does pass by without being tested and they are in fact contaminated by pesticides or whatever. What's the risk to me as a consumer?
Most of the chemicals will not really do damage if you have a small quantity. So it's if you have over and over and over and over the same chemical and then it builds up in your body, then that will affect you. But if it's just a small quantity that slipped out,
an isolated incident,
then it shouldn't be a concern as long as it's not something that happens all the time.
So South Africa shouldn't be worried about egg contamination. They shouldn't be worried about a scarcity of chicken, and they shouldn't be filling their freezers with chicken right now.
I think because we have taken some chickens off our chain. So, for instance, most of the chickens that have been affected are your egg-laying hens, and therefore we are putting measures in place to make sure that we cover that shortfall and limit the impact of the disease as much as possible. But it is not. It is likely that they could be, but at the moment it's not the case. But
so we shouldn't be panicking.
No panic at this point.
Let's look at poultry farmers. Is it viable? People sitting here thinking, well, that might be a market I'd like to go into. Let's look at scope for poultry farmers. Entrepreneurs watching us this morning, thinking about ways of, getting into business. Is this a good idea?
Poultry always presents a good opportunity for job creation for people getting into business. And other than the fact that we have bird flu that is now has been causing a bit of problems for the last 3 months, it is still a good place to be in terms of wanting to put your investment. However, one must be very careful what type of operation they set up and who they partner with, because on your own it's very difficult, but then there are opportunities to partner with others who are already in the business. And also you're looking at some old farmers who are keen to mentor up-and-coming farmers who want to get into the business. But it's the largest agricultural sector in South Africa, so there are always opportunities for people to come.
Where does one find or go to try and partner up with established poultry farmers or look for opportunities? Question number one. And number two, what happens and why do we have situations from time to time where you have a glut of chicken or eggs on the market?
The first one about the information, what we encourage people to do is to actually get some basic training before they get into it, so that they understand what they're getting themselves into. We found that most people think it's a good idea until they get to understand it a bit better, and then they think maybe it'll be better to do something else.
Yes.
So we really encourage people to actually get informed and educate themselves, and there are people offering courses, and if you don't really want to go for a course, research as much as possible before you put money in, because it is quite an intensive and quite a
Costly.
labor-intensive and also very costly exercise to get into the industry. And then also, the most critical thing is making sure that you do have a market for your product, because it's a fast-moving commodity, and once you've got it, you need to get rid of it. And if you don't have a market sorted out yet, and that's where we find most people struggle, because then they haven't got a market yet.
All right.
And then you had a second question.
When you have a glut in the market, why do you have a glut of poultry in the market?
It's usually with chickens mostly is because we've got some influx of imports coming in from other countries, and that's when you end up with more chicken on the market. There is sufficient mouths for the chicken, but then when the influx is quite a lot, then that can cause a blockage in the market. And
My final question to you this morning. We have established, or you have indicated, that it's a burgeoning market. It's very well established. Why do we still import chicken then, if we've got such a good, solid industry in South Africa?
You need a lot of time for that. But in short, it's because you have other markets that produce a full chicken, but then they only consume parts of it. Like, for instance, in the European Union, they only consume the breast meat. And in America, they consume the breast meat as well as the wings. But then something must happen to the rest of it. And then the rest of it is sold at very low prices to markets that will take it. And we happen to be one of those markets that will take then the drumsticks and the thighs, because we prefer them as well. But then they land here at prices that are quite low, and that makes
very
it very
affordable.
hard, makes it very hard for our local producers to compete with. But the consumer, if you have a look at it, you can't tell the difference, because you pay the same at the supermarket.
But no, there's no fear of perhaps, pushing our local producers out of the market.
There is always that fear, and that's why we've been working very hard with government to make sure that we work together to put some measures in place to ensure
to protect our consumers. That's all we have time for. Thank you indeed. Lovely talking to you. That was Dr. Nkuna from the South African Poultry Association. And please rest, just sigh, a big sigh of relief. You don't have to stock up your freezers, and no, we are not ingesting contaminated eggs, so everything is pretty safe as far as the South African poultry and egg market is concerned. Still to come, food security and a whole lot more, so do stay with us. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and welcome back. It is the final interview of the morning. We're going to be talking food security with Christine van Grienen, and this type of work really takes a lot of dedication and love. For people working in this type of a space, it comes from a deep-seated care and concern of other people. So let's see what Christine van Grienen is all about and why she has gotten involved with food security. Christine, morning, welcome to the program.
Morning, thank you for having me.
Lovely to have you here. And food security, it's a name that's been going around for a while, and people kind of wonder, I'm wondering myself, food security, how do you get your mind around something like this? Surely when we talk food security, we're talking about the less privileged and wanting to make food more available for them. Am I on the right track?
Yes. Food security very simply means having enough access, have everybody in South Africa or Africa or the world having access to healthy, nutritious food in sufficient quantities at all times. So it's interesting that you say, we refer to necessarily poorer communities, but food security even means middle class or upper incomes having too much takeaways, for example. That's also an example of being food insecure. So it's about healthy, nutritious food in sufficient quantities for everybody.
I'm going to ask you in a minute or two how you became so passionate and involved with food security. But the other thing topmost on your mind would also be an issue around food wastage, not only in our homes, but in restaurants and at big events as well.
Definitely, that is also part of the issue of food security, and especially here in South Africa. But in particular, we looked at tackling it from what we can do with young people and with schools in particular.
How did you become involved? When and how did you realize there's a need here, there's way too much wastage, there's too little food to go around, very especially amongst the poorer South African citizens? Never mind that the middle class and the affluent classes are not food secure because they eat the wrong type of foods. I think it needs to start, the assistance needs to start where it's needed most.
Yes,
How did that twig with you?
As a mom, for a long time I was a stay-at-home mom, and I was the kind of mom who did any hobby going. So whether it was sewing, baking, anything that was a hobby, mosaics, anything I did. And eventually I started gardening, and I started growing my own vegetables. And through research and experience, I discovered that you actually need a very small space to be able to grow enough vegetables for yourself and your family, and have enough to share with friends and family and the rest of the community. So that's sort of where it started. And in speaking to other moms and friends, I realized people were so intimidated by the idea of growing their own vegetables.
Oh, I am.
Yes. I don't know. It's like when your goldfish dies and you never want to try again. But I found that many people take something that is so basic and should be part of everybody's life. They are, besides intimidated, it doesn't even occur to them that they can do it. So from my own experience, and then going back into the corporate space, I work for a company that does research-based school management programs. And through our work in schools, we looked at how better can we teach children responsibility, empathy, teamwork, all of those things. And growing a vegetable garden is a place to do that. So sort of the one step followed onto the other step. And now, growing a vegetable garden, it's really, in the end, the biggest message that it can exemplify is food security.
Now, you started at schools, at school level, and is the right level to start at.
Yes, exactly.
You're getting kids involved, growing their own food garden.
Exactly.
They're eating from it, and they're distributing, hopefully, to the poorest of the poor.
Yes.
And in terms of breaking into communities, how's that going?
This is why we started with our Grow Your Own food kits, because the idea that we want is for each child to sort of have a vegetable garden in their hands. That's really the idea. The idea of growing a community garden is what we would like everybody to do. But it starts with you having that tactile experience for yourself, experiencing the soil, smelling the earth, planting the seeds, looking at it every day on your windowsill, making sure that it has enough water, harvesting the little leaves and making your little salad from there, and watching it grow again. And that's the kind of education experience that we want each child to have.
So where have you rolled this out, and how's it progressing?
We've started rolling out in schools, and it's going very well. What was interesting is that like I said, we introduced it for children so that each child can have their own experience. But I find that teachers say to me, can you come back again and do one just for the staff? Because they also haven't had this experience of growing their own food. You will find, you'll be surprised how many adults recognize a vegetable in the grocery store but wouldn't be able to recognize that same vegetable as a seedling. So what started out as wanting to educate children is really about so many people haven't had the experience of growing their own food.
So you now have disseminated this information to the children in the classroom.
Yes.
The staff and the teachers have asked you to come in to talk with them as well. Take us through the process. How do you how do you disseminate the information to adults? And what is the take-home message for them? And do you actually give them a little pack to start as well?
Yes.
So talk us through the process.
Okay, so we come into schools and we talk about, because as young as children are, whether they're in primary school or in high school, they understand the concept of food security because it touches everybody. Even if it's something you're not dealing with, your friend sitting next to you in the classroom might be dealing with an issue around food security. So we come in and we talk about food security and what it really means. And then we look at it from a perspective of what can you as a South African do to improve food security. So each child receives a little garden box with the soil that has the correct nutrients, and we explain why that's important. We plant together as a classroom, and we water together, and we talk about what it means to look after those vegetables that you receive, which is typically a lettuce and spinach, and we talk about how it looks when it starts to grow, what you need to do, how to cut the leaves so that the plant can grow again, and make a little salad for yourself. So the idea is that you are your own farmer, and we are hoping that you as a community are going to take that further and start looking at planting for not just yourself, but your family and your community.
Now, children are very impatient.
Yes.
They don't understand the concept
Yes.
of time, tomorrow, next week, next month, 6 weeks, 6 months, etc.
Yes.
How do you take them over that hurdle and suggest to them that it takes 6 weeks for a lettuce head to grow, for example, and to keep them in the loop of things and the life cycle of that lettuce without them losing interest and patience?
Two ways, when we plant together with children, they have the option of taking their box home and looking after it at home, or it becomes a teaching tool in the classroom, because it's teaching germination, photosynthesis, all of those lessons that we learn in science anyway. So they get to keep that little garden box on the windowsill in their classroom, and as a community, we as a school community, we're talking about it every day. We're reminding each other. We're saying, remember, this is what really happens with food. Food doesn't magically appear on the shelf or in the can or at the takeaway. It really is something that you have to look after and be patient about. So in terms of getting the hurdle, it's not so much getting over it as it is that we teach them that it is important to persevere at something as important as where does your food come from.
All right. We're talking to Christine van Greenen. We're talking food security. Do stay with us. We're going to talk some more on how she can get someone like myself hooked into gardening and growing my own food. I think just the thought of waiting, I made a reference to children becoming impatient. I think I'm very impatient. So we're going to ask her how we get over that and how we can start spreading the news and making the circle bigger. Stay with us. Lines are open. Time for an ad break. Welcome back, and we are talking to Christine van Greenen. We're talking food security, and if you'd like to get one of these kits, call in, or any further information around growing your own little pavement garden or little garden on your windowsill, even that would enable you to feed yourself for a couple of weeks. Christine, back to you and people wanting to start. I've heard about an initiative, someone in Greenside started a pavement garden, and she put up a sign suggesting whoever would like to help themselves to whatever grows there could do so. And it was, I think it's still ongoing, but I did think at the time that I'd see a whole host of pavement gardens popping around in all of the suburbs. I haven't seen that. Why do you think? Why do you think people are afraid to promote pavement gardens?
I think because I don't know, that to me that's the most wonderful concept. So why wouldn't anyone want to do that?
It could work so beautifully. I'm thinking my own, you know, the area I live in. For example, if I grew spinach on my pavement, and if you were living next door to me and you grew lettuce, and the neighbour next door grew tomatoes, for example, just 3 neighbours, and we exchanged our produce and passed it on to other people, and even for the helpers and gardeners in the area to help themselves and take the food home.
Yes. You know, when I think of, well, that's why we wanted to start with schools in particular, because there's this perception that gardening is so much work. And in the meantime, there are so many different methods. Like I said, if I think of my own garden, where I started with a very small space, but was able to grow a huge amount of produce in a small space based on educating myself about different methods. So for us, you know, initiatives like that are important and I think wonderful, but that's why we wanted to start with children. They're learning about germination anyway. They go as far as doing the you know, the little bean that you germinate in cotton wool. It just doesn't seem to extend further from there. They learn about photosynthesis and nutrients and all of that. So we wanted to start with where we felt there is like, how can I say, almost like a captive workforce. They have the basis there anyway. We're just extending it. So that's the idea, is that they start with we start with each child growing their own garden on their little school desktop, and eventually the progress of it is that they're going to grow a school community garden that is going to feed the school.
You haven't got there yet?
We have started one, yes, we have started one, and we've started contributing to that school's feeding scheme. But again, you know, like I said, we started last year, and we looked at how can we improve it, how can we make it better. And for me, again, based on my own experience as a mom, I feel that each child having a little garden on their desktop is the way to go.
How do you believe this initiative is going to benefit South Africa or South African citizens?
Through education, educating people about food security and the role that you as a South African can play. So whether you are in a rural area, whether you are in a middle-class family, everybody has the capability to grow their own food and learn about, in South Africa, for example, we have an issue around water supply and how that affects our food supply. But part of our gardening and our teaching is teaching you how to use water economically, how to, you know, all of that goes into...
Respect all the resources at your fingertips.
Yes, yes.
And you, obviously, with children, they're going to see the end result.
Exactly.
They're going to see that they've respected the environment.
Yes.
And despite that, that they're still having the benefits, or they're seeing the
tactile experience.
Yeah, the fruits of their harvest.
The fruits of their
Literally
harvest.
the fruits of their harvest.
In a very simple way. It's not dependent on the school being open that day and therefore I had access to the garden. Or my teacher was there today and therefore he's the person in charge of the school garden and so I was able to go. It's about that child, whether they're at home with the little garden box on their windowsill or whether they're at school with it on the windowsill of the classroom. It's yours and your responsibility and your experience and your vegetable that you are going to eat. So, you know, the idea of sharing and taking care of the greater community is there, but we want each child to first have that tactile experience.
Apart from that tactile experience, there's a whole host of learning going on with that child.
Exactly.
It's responsibility, it's accountability, it's sharing, it's caring, it's seeing the fruits of your hard work. There's just so many lessons involved. Commitment as well, that you need to see something to completion. You're starting a project and you're seeing it to completion. So there's a whole host of lessons to be learned for that child, and hopefully they can then go on and you know, make a huge difference in their immediate community or neighborhood.
Exactly.
What are the plans going forward for your organization as far as pavement gardening is concerned?
Pavement gardening is not really on our agenda at the moment. You know, we would like to work around schools and the school community for now, assisting with their feeding schemes and educating learners. But the idea is, I don't see why not. A child who has had that experience of growing his own food and knows how to persevere even when it doesn't work, and take those seeds and replant again. And even though I forgot to water it, and maybe that one didn't work out, I know I still have my little box, I still have my swale, and I can do it again. That child, I think, is going to be inclined to convince his parents and plant his own garden at home, because now he has the education and he knows what it takes.
And I guess in terms of water scarcity or using water sparingly and with respect, that's another lesson that they're going to learn. They could use the grey water from the house, get mom and the entire family involved in conserving the grey water to water their gardens. So there's a lot of learning in this one simple activity. And of course, you're still putting food on the table. This does obviously cost, it costs money because you are working with the less impoverished schools. So you need to get kits together for them. What does that kit look like? What does it consist? And what is the cost of the kit?
Okay, so our kits are at 65 Rand, and we have various sponsorship options depending on how many learners you wish to sponsor. So the price varies according to how many you sponsor. And that kit comes with your little container with the correct soil, our soil mix that has all the correct nutrients. It comes with your seeds and a little instruction, and it comes with a little tray for the water drainage and that kind of thing. But the idea is, besides giving the child that kit, it's the lessons that go around it. So, we go to schools, and the idea is that each class plants together in their classroom, on their school tabletop.
You're running a pledge.
Sorry. And the other thing is that we talk, you touched on water conservation.
The cost as well, yes.
Yes, and water conservation. That's very important, because everybody thinks watering a garden is about rain falling like that, and it's...
Or watering the garden is going to be costly. It's going to be taking away from a very precious resource which you need to be conserving.
Yes, so we teach children about paying attention to how much you're watering, where are you watering, are you watering the leaves, or are you watering the roots, all of those kinds of things, how to treat the soil around your plant to make sure that your water is being used in the most effective way possible. So all of those are things that a child touching and looking and experiencing it for himself, that's how you really get to cement those issues.
And it's lifelong lessons.
Yes, exactly. Lifelong lessons that too many of us haven't been exposed to.
Too true. And we've come to the end of the interview. Let's talk about people who'd like to pledge and make a difference in communities and even little children's lives, to give them the opportunity of learning a lifelong lesson.
So our website is www.familyfoodsecurity.org, and on there you will find our Take the Pledge, where we ask South Africans to pledge 5 Rand towards growing their own vegetable garden. And as you've said, it can be your pavement garden, it can be your garden in the backyard, and it can be as small as your little pot. However you define your vegetable garden. And then your 5 Rand goes towards feeding schemes and education programs in schools, much the same as what we're doing with our Grow Your Own food kits. Our other option then is for corporates to sponsor our Grow Your Own food kits for schools across South Africa, and those two are on our website.
Well, I think it's a fascinating concept. Not only are you teaching children skills that they can use for the rest of their lives, that they can become self-sufficient in their own homes, in their own communities, but of course you are also then supplying food to the neediest of the needy. All I can say to you is much success, ongoing success, and hopefully you partner with all the big guns and grow as vastly as you hope to grow, and let's prevent South Africa from starving. Thank you indeed, and keep up the great work.
Thank you.
That was Christine van Grienen talking to us about food security. And it's not about millions or thousands or hundreds of rands. It's just a tiny little amount, 65 rand, and you yourself can start your own pavement garden or your own garden with your community. Start sharing, start caring, and make sure that this gets implemented in your children's schools as well. Thank you for watching. As always, till Saturday morning, please take care on the roads. It's been great being with you this morning, and I can't wait to get back together with you on Saturday morning. Till then, as always, a big thank you to the production team, and from me, Julie Alli, it is Khuda Hafiz.
Ya hala, 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 حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا، حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا، يا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا، يا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا، يا هلا ويا